All right. So, as we talked about today, we are talking about Palm Sunday, but we're talking about Jesus coming into Jerusalem beginning this week. And first, before we start on that very first slide, which is a little bit of a video, I want you to think, what are some of the things, what are you afraid of? What are things that you are afraid of? I'm going to make you answer that in a little bit. Probably need to turn it way up. You remember?
Walter, I am not going up in that thing. Helicopters have zero aerodynamics and no glide ability in case of engine failure.
It's our only choice.
It's a box held up in the sky by a lawnmower blade. Pass.
Hope you're up for a little hand-holding today.
That guy is not getting in that helicopter. Actually, he did. But yes, we're all afraid of different things. What are some of the things that you're afraid of? Aging. Good. What? Heights. Okay. Falling. You're just afraid of falling from the height. Okay. Makes sense. Snakes. Whew. Okay. Dementia. I should be there. Anything else? Being alone. Rejection. It's good. A lot of you aren't afraid of anything, right? Failing. Boy, you guys are doing good. You've got part of my list already here. Losing employment, losing your job. Yep. So we all have different fears. And when we look at that, human beings are afraid of many things. Spiders. We have one son that's terrified of spiders. I mean, it's funny to watch these 50-year-old men come and get their spider when they're here visiting. You know, they don't like spiders. Or bats, heights, closed spaces, open spaces. Some people don't like to get out of their house. They like to stay in there. Huh? Clowns. There's people now that don't like clowns. That just baffles me. When I was a kid, we loved clowns, and all of a sudden they're evil. I thought, what happened in between there? Poor clowns. But, huh? Yeah, evidently there's too many horror movies. Yeah, like the dolls. We have a doll at my house, and the boys, when our adult sons are there, they have to put her in the closet because she's an old doll and she looks scary, I guess. I thought, must be the Chucky person or whatever it was. I shouldn't have gave it a haircut when I was a kid because it doesn't look so good. But yeah, I found out I was scared of closed spaces, and I didn't even know it. I took our son down to a youth retreat in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and it was around Halloween time, and they always made a maze. Well, they made it out of hay bales. And so you had to crawl through there. You couldn't it wasn't like a corn maze where you have open sky. It was enclosed. That was all there was this space where you crawled through. And I thought, I didn't know I was scared of enclosed spaces till I got in there. And it's pitch black. I can't see a thing. And thankfully, my son's in front of me, and he goes, hang on to my foot. and he led me out. But there's times that they're irrational too. We know there's nothing going to happen. We know in our heads that everything is okay, but still we're afraid. You know, where they're called phobias, and then there's fears that we should have. There's fears that we need for survival. You know, the fears of, when we're teaching our kids, we want them to make sure they listen to us. Fear of not listening to mom and dad is one of the things we want to instill because we love them and we know what's best for them. Otherwise, maybe it's crossing the road. I mean, there's things that we should be afraid of. And we need to be mindful of those as well. You know, as I checked out what were the most common fears of humankind on scienceofpeople.com, it said the 8 biggest fears you face in life. First, fear of failure. I heard that one. Second, fear of rejection. I think I heard that one too. Fear of change. Fear of public speaking. Fear of imperfection or not being good enough. A fear of being vulnerable. A fear of time. Be the aging one. A fear of loneliness. We mentioned a lot of those a little bit ago. As we consider this day, as we consider Palm Sunday, we often think of it as a time of rejoicing and celebrating. Jesus was coming in, as we read, and people ran and cut down branches, and they lined the road, and they were celebrating. And it was the prophecy of Zechariah being acted out. In Zechariah 9:9, it says, "Rejoice, O people of Israel, of Zion. Shout in triumph, O people of Jerusalem. Look, your king is coming to you. He is riding on a donkey, riding on a donkey's colt." On that first day, that beginning of Passover week, as we call it Passion Week now, Jesus came into Jerusalem in a way he hadn't come before. He had come to Jerusalem before. He'd been coming ever since he was 12 years old for Passover. He made it was a regular part of his life and his worship. But in the last 3 years, it had gotten so that he was kind of, a lot of the times, he tried to come in with the least amount of fanfare possible because he didn't want to draw a crowd. He didn't want to take away from the day. He didn't want to take away from the meaning of why he was there. And he didn't want to draw attention to himself because it wasn't his time yet. But this day, he tells them to go get a donkey. This day, he sits there and he gets on this donkey and he rides into town. Now, there's a crowd for a number of reasons. Many over the last 3 years have heard of all of his miracles and seen his miracles. And many of them, just a few weeks before, days before, were around where Lazarus had been raised from the dead. And that brought a big crowd. You know, you want to see a guy that can raise people from the dead. You want to experience and you want to, I want to see who that is. I want to figure out what this guy is about. So there was many there for many different reasons. Plus, it was Passover. And all the people of Israel were called and instructed to come to Passover every year to Jerusalem to celebrate this event. So there's people from all over the known world coming to Jerusalem. So today, we're going to be in John 12 to 16. It'll be up on the screen, and it's also in your pew Bibles on page 873. I want to share these 4 verses. I mean, it's very similar to the passage in Mark, but not exactly the same. So I want to share with that. So John 12, verses 12 to 16. It says, "The next day, the great crowd that had come for the festival heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. They took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, 'Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel.' Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it, as it is written, 'Do not be afraid, daughter Zion. See, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt.' At first, his disciples did not understand all this. Only after Jesus was glorified did they realize that these things had been written about him and that these things had been done to him." Days before, as I said, people, knew that Jesus might be coming. They were probably wondering and they were probably watching for him because they wanted to see this miracle creator, this person that was so powerful. And they also were aware, at least many of them were aware, that he was coming into enemy territory because they knew that the Pharisees and the people in the temple basically had a target on Jesus' back. They wanted to prove that he was wrong. They wanted to find a way to arrest him. They wanted to get him out of town. They didn't want him there. And so there are people, wondering, is Jesus really going to come today? Is he really going to come to town? And as I said, here he comes. And he isn't showing that he is afraid of the Pharisees or the religious people. He isn't trying to hold back any longer. They're calling him king, and he's letting them. At first, before, he always said, no, I'm not your king. Don't raise me up like that. But this time, they're shouting, "Behold, the King of Israel." And he is coming into town. And as Jesus and his disciples are going and they go get that donkey and he rides on it, he's coming in this big parade. It's a big deal. And gathering people as they go. And I find it interesting because if he was truly somebody that was coming in like a military king, he probably wouldn't be riding a donkey. He'd have probably been riding a stallion, and prancing, and he'd have all of his soldiers and his entourage, and it would be kicking up dust for miles. They would know that he was coming in as a victorious military leader. Jesus does the opposite. He comes in on a humble donkey. Donkeys don't tend to hurry unless you make them. They kind of plod along down the road I mean, that they didn't get the name stubborn by accident. I mean, I should have had Jackie bring one of hers in. But they have donkeys, and so here he is riding this donkey slowly, intentionally coming into town. And these people are, like I said, they're treating him as a great warrior, a great king, but some of them must have been thinking, if he was really going to be taking over Rome, wouldn't he come in a little bit different than this? But here, he's accepting the crowds, they're accepting what's going on in this leisurely place, and they're filling the streets. And they said, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." An amazing spectacle. It's hard to even get your mind around it. But to see what Jesus was finally showing, that he is the Messiah, that he is this leader. And yet, in John's gospel, he includes that passage from Zechariah. And as I was reading it this past week, and we've been going through John, it says, "Do not be afraid, Zion, daughter of Zion." And I hadn't really paid attention to that before until I read it again this last couple of weeks. Do not be afraid. Now, why would John used that version of those words of the Hebrew? Because in the Hebrew, it is rejoice and shout greatly. And to us, that does not sound like do not be afraid, but it is one of the reasons that Hebrew word is there. It can be used as well as do not be afraid, because that would be a military person coming in. So it is shouting in great honor, but also don't be afraid. This is your king. He's coming. And I thought that is really cool, because when I was looking at that, he's telling people that here comes Jesus. He's fulfilling this prophecy. He is going to be king. Don't be afraid, because what happens, when a king comes in to a country, what happens? I mean, when they take over, there's usually a lot of bloodshed. There's a lot of hard stuff going on. And John's saying, don't be afraid. Jesus is coming in. The King of Glory is coming in. What was there to be afraid of? Change, yeah. Stuff's going to change, people. Things are going to be different. So let's step back. What has happened? Why are they even expecting a Messiah? Moses, way back during the wilderness journeys and near the end, said, expect somebody to come. Another prophet will come like me. They said, he's going to come. He's going to come and rescue the people of Israel. And Daniel prophesied about it. Zechariah prophesied about Jesus. David, Isaiah, Jeremiah, all have prophesied about this day, about Jesus coming victoriously into Jerusalem. Since Rome's takeover in 63 BC, the people of Israel have been looking for that Messiah. They want somebody to come in and get rid of Rome. They want somebody to reestablish them as the people that live in Zion, in Jerusalem. And the temple, the temple now is rebuilt and things, but there's this tension between the Romans and the people of Israel, the Jewish people. Romans hate the Jews hate the Romans, they hate the taxation. There's just a lot of animosity. So the Jewish people still are looking for that Messiah. And they are really counting on Jesus being it, those that are on this parade. They're expecting that's what Jesus is going to do. And all through Jesus' ministry, he told the people, and especially the disciples, that isn't what he was coming for. He was going to set up a kingdom of heaven, not a kingdom on this earth. And they struggled with that. But here they're still welcoming him, and they're still celebrating. They're still wanting this army to come in. So nevertheless, blessed is the King of Israel. They said, blessed is God. Hosanna, Hosanna. And maybe it was because of the hindsight when John wrote this gospel, but like I said, he wrote in here, Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it and said, do not be afraid, daughter Zion. The pulpit commentary said this: John transformed the rejoice greatly shout of the prophet to fear not. He seems to take it one stage to the one stage of fulfillment when there was anxiety might momentarily get put to rest. Fear not is a lower form of great rejoicing. Because when we don't fear, we rejoice. So fear not. You can rejoice. It's something for men to dismiss their doubts and hush their unrest, even when they cannot burst into song. So he's saying, fear not. You know, if you think about all those fears you all mentioned and that we talked about, if you didn't have those, it would be easier to rejoice, wouldn't it? You wouldn't have that fear taking away the joy of the moment. John is dispelling the anxious thoughts of the followers of Christ. The king is coming. Fear not, your king is coming. He will make all things right. He will settle your fear. He will give you courage. He will take away your doubt. He will give you strength. He will be your strength and your shield. Jesus is with you, and he will be with you forever. The phrase fear not, or a form of the words fear not or do not be afraid, are in Scripture at least 365 times. God doesn't want us to fear. He wants us to know that he is with us. He reveals to them that he is going to bring them peace, but not, Jesus told them, I came not to bring you peace as the world gives you. In John 14:27, he says, peace I leave with you, peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not be troubled. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not be afraid. And later in John 16:33, he says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. Jesus wants to bring us peace in our lives. We need not fear. We have the peace of Christ. He has overcome the world, and we can rest in that. We can trust him in that. So what about the fears we face in our lives? Remember our list? The 8 biggest fears you face? Well, that first one, fear of failure. Jeremiah 29:11 says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. Excuse me. God's plans for us are for a future and a hope, not to fear. As you go forward, don't worry so much about failing. How many of us have wanted to attempt something, but we were afraid we'd fail, so we didn't even bother? Oh, look at all the hands. Well, I bet we've all been there. But you know, one of the best ways, according to even the science of people, is not to fear failing, just to fear not ever starting. Go ahead and fail. You know, the more times you fail, the better off you're going to get better at not worrying about it so much. And I think of that a lot because I do a lot of that. I just keep going, and I figure, well, you know, if I fail, I can try it a different way, and I'll redo it and try something different. You know, the more times you get embarrassed, the less it's going to bother you. And even, you know, we're all going to fail at something. I mean, that's inevitable. Denzel Washington said it pretty good. He said, you will be bad at something. And he said, I'm bad at a lot of things. It's not the end of the world, so why not practice building up your failure immunity in advance? So you know you're going to fail at stuff. Don't let that stop you from trying. Keep working at it. Because Jesus is there. I mean, he gives us courage. I'm still not too crazy about water. But when I was in high school, when I was a new Christian, I was not terrified of water. I'd go in the water if I could touch the ground. You know, that'd be my swimming experience, is if I could touch the bottom. I failed. That was the only class I ever failed in high school. I got an F in swimming. I got an E for effort. I remember we got those back in the day. And one of the teachers tossed me in the deep end and made me swim to the end. That was in Kellogg. And that didn't help. I never learned. But when I became a Christian, I found that verse in 2 Timothy 1:7. It says, God does not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. And I said, I was 21, and I was coming here to South Troy, and I thought, there's a Y in town. I am going to learn how to swim and get over my fear of swimming, fear of water. So I can swim, but I haven't practiced much, so it's not very good and not very pretty. But I don't think I'd drown, at least not right away. My treading water never got very good. But I'm not as afraid of it as I was because I faced that. And that's what God, when I heard he doesn't give us a spirit of fear, that helped a lot, that he gives us power and a sound mind. So go forward, keep failing, keep working at it. Fear of rejection was the second one. Isaiah 54:4 says, do not be afraid. You will not be put to shame. Do not fear disgrace. You will not be humiliated. You will forget the shame of your youth and remember no more the reproach of your widowhood. God is there for you. You don't have to, he will never reject you. So when you reframe rejection in this human life, because we're all going to get rejected. You know, I love the picture that they gave. It said, imagine this long hallway with a bunch of doors. And you open the first door, you knock on there, and there he is. That's the man I'm going to marry. That's my heartthrob. And he says, oh, no way, closes the door on you. Instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I got rejected, go to the next door. Maybe there's a better one in door number 2. Just keep opening the doors. Keep working at it because that isn't the best for you. Think of yourself better. Don't settle. A lot of times when we get to that fear of rejection, we settle. We settle for something below par that God does not have for us. So keep working on those doors. Keep trying. Keep checking it out. Doesn't mean that was for you. In fact, probably something is better for you is behind that next door. Overcoming that fear of rejection means holding yourself to the highest standards that God has for you. And just keep going from there. Third is fear of change. And that is hard. That's hard for a lot of us, for a lot of things. Isaiah 41:13 says, for I am the Lord your God who takes hold of your right hand. I'll walk you there, he says. I will be with you. I'll help you. Do not fear. I will help you. People of Israel hated change. They're in this 40 years in the wilderness. And they were in Egypt. They were slaves. Now, one would think if you were a slave in Egypt, you would be glad to be free, right? And here they are, 40 years in the wilderness, and every time something bad happened, the first thing they wanted to do was, anybody going to tell me, what did they want to do? They want to go back to Egypt. It was comfortable. It was familiar. And you know, we do that. We do that in recovery a lot. That's one of the things that happens when we finally get clean or sober, to go back home. And a lot of times the people that we grew up with don't like the change either. But we have a hard time figuring out how to retool our lives and to redo that. We talked to some people this last week, and that was one of their fears is what happens when I get back, get done, through treatment. And they're afraid because they don't know what's going to be there for them. They know they have to change their entire life to stay clean. That's hard work, and it's easy to fear change. But remember, you are never alone. God will give you what you need for that change. Fourth is fear of public speaking. Believe it or not, that was one of mine. Still is some days. But I thought of Moses. I love Moses. Because Moses is brought up in the people of Israel, in Egypt, and he was brought up to be a king, a pharaoh. So he would have had all the lessons, all the teaching. He would have had all the schooling to be an amazing public figure. And after 40 years of serving in the desert, because he killed somebody and he's not a refugee. Yeah, he's a fugitive. Thank you. That's the right word. 40 years as a fugitive, God appears to him in a burning bush, and he says, you're going back to Egypt, and you're getting your people out of there. And Moses continually says in Exodus 3 and chapter 4, I'm not reading them all, that's why I'm kind of giving you the paraphrase. God called him to go, and Moses kept saying, send somebody else, send somebody else. And finally, God got to the place where he said, and you're going to speak to Pharaoh, in front of him, and you're going to have this staff, and you're going to have all these tools. And Moses said, I can't speak. My tongue is slow. I stutter. Oh, I can't do this. And he again says, send somebody else. Finally, God says, I'm going to send your brother. He can speak, and you can speak through him. But eventually, Moses gains that knowledge. You know, by the time he's done those 40 years, you can see that he's the one doing all the talking. But at that beginning, God said, who created your mouth? If I've called you to go, you'll be okay. You can do this. And we do what many of us are afraid of, talking in front of people. I love the verse in Joshua 1:9. It says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will go with you wherever you go. So if God has called you to speak in front of people, he'll help you do it. When I first started doing this, my knees would shake so bad, I was glad that they used to have old pulpits, and I would stand behind there. And I wiggled a lot, and people could see it. And I thought, well, it takes a bit for me to stand up here. I used to be in organ recitals, and they thought I was really fast on the pedals. And one day they said, boy, you had vibrato. I had vibrato because my knees were shaking so bad. It wasn't on purpose. But I was terrified. It wasn't never my big thing. But God obviously did a little work, or a lot of work on me. So fear of public speaking. 5, fear of not being good enough. Oh, a lot of us fear that. We don't even know why God calls us sometimes or asks us to do something, because we're afraid to fail. We're afraid that we aren't going to do it good enough. Being confident of this, in Philippians 1:6, Paul wrote, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Again, if he's called you to do something, he will finish the work. Trust him. Stop overthinking it. Anybody do that? Oh, I have a lot. Yeah, I've told that to so many people. I think you're overthinking this. Just take the next step. Just do the next thing. Sheryl Sandberg writes, done is better than perfect. That is my mantra. Done is better than perfect. Because if I waited till I got something perfect, I probably wouldn't get very much done. And sadly, sometimes that bites me in the rear end sometimes, because I should be more careful. But I do want to get things done sometimes. And I think it's better than not getting them finished. So he will give you what you need. And he doesn't always tell you how it's going to turn out. That could be a lesson in failure. And that's okay, because God will teach us no matter what. 6 is fear of vulnerability. Psalm 27:1 says, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is a stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When we feel vulnerable, it's usually because we're afraid of what other people think, or how they're going to treat us, or that they aren't going to like us, or if we say something and they're not as trustworthy as we had thought they were going to be. You know, we really can't love another person until we're willing to be vulnerable, because it's just a superficial type then. We need to totally give of ourselves, but we also have to be choosy about who that is. We don't just dump everything on anybody. So take it one step at a time. You know, give them a little and see what happens. You know, build up that trust. Many of us have come to that place where we've been hurt by others, and it makes it more hard to trust every time. And we build up a resistance to being vulnerable. And those of us that have had those kind of backgrounds, it takes a lot of work to take that step. And it's very easy for us to end up going backwards again for a few steps. But just keep trying it. Keep working it out. And also give that other person some grace. Sometimes we expect an awful lot about that other person that they're not even capable of handling. So fear of vulnerability. Fear of time. Fear of getting older, I guess. There's Ecclesiastes 3:1-4. I love these verses because it reminds me that there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. There is a time for everything. When a feeling of urgency starts pushing out the things in your lives, take one step. Take a step back and just say, it's okay, I don't have to get everything done today. Figure out what you need to get finished. I have a list that's called, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta do this. And I catch myself saying that way too often. And I hate that. And I've been working at it over the last couple of years to quit saying, I gotta do this. Because I feel that makes me feel more urgent. And so now I write it all down on my list, and I go through at the end of the week. I hope I check off some of the things or most of them. But if I can't, they'll go on to next week's list. They're not going anywhere. And so I'm working through that because that is one of my big things and then I did that to the detriment of my family at times. I had to do this, especially my kids when they were younger. I got all this stuff I got to do. And so sometimes they didn't get as much attention. And now, by the time the last 4 came, it was a little bit better. But it's easy to do. It's easy to get those lists in your way. 2 Thessalonians 3:16 says, now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times and in every way. The Lord be with all of you. Doesn't sound like there's an urgency in there. The Lord of peace. Lastly, that fear of loneliness. I use the same verse twice this time. Isaiah 41:13. The Lord your God who takes hold of your right hand says to you, do not be afraid. Do not fear. I will help you. When I felt afraid, when I've been alone, I envision holding onto God's hands and remembering he's right there. He has always been with me. He never leaves me. Romans 8:30, at the end of Romans 8, it says, what can separate us from the love of God? Nothing. And it goes a whole list, but nothing can separate you from God's love. So when you feel alone, remember you are never alone if you have a relationship with Christ, because he is always there. And if you're feeling alone, we do as human beings. We sometimes get stuck. We feel lonely. We miss people. We miss Jesus with skin on. We want people around us, and that's not a bad thing. But then you need to get to church, get to a life group, find a way to volunteer, get out of the house. Because you aren't going to people don't usually tend to show up at your door and make you feel less alone. You have to get out there and do something about it. But find ways. And then a lot of us, too, need to find a way to enjoy being by ourselves. Sometimes we've had families and kids and everything our whole entire lives. It's a total new thing to be home alone, to be alone, and to learn to like that, find hobbies and different things that we enjoy doing. But, if you're finding you're getting depressed, not wanting to get out of bed, then you need to get out. You need to go somewhere. And I encourage you, obviously, to come to church on Sunday mornings. But you can be pretty lonely sitting here if you're not talking to anybody, if you're not letting somebody know that, they can come into your life. Extend your hands, extend your voice. Go out and find an activity, something to try. But always remember, you are never alone in Jesus Christ. And then go to prayer. Prayer not only gives us opportunities to express our fears, but it also opens up a channel for us to receive God's grace and his strength and his peace. This constant communication helps you to feel his presence. When you're talking to God, you know you're not alone. He says, I am with you. I will always be with you. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. You and I need to take comfort in knowing that God is always listening when we spend time talking to him. He's there wanting to support us. He's waiting for us to just reach out and ask. He wants to be there for us. Jesus entered Jerusalem on a mission to pay the price for our sin, to die for us. He knew his mission. He didn't come to conquer Rome. That would have been a very short-sighted thing for him to do. Jesus came to set up and to make all things right, to build a kingdom on earth. But that kingdom won't happen until he returns again. He came to prepare us for him. and to make a way for us to be in that kingdom with him. Do not fear, your king is coming. He's coming. Jesus entered Jerusalem not to conquer it, but to bring it hope and peace. Jesus entered Jerusalem not to set up a kingdom on earth, but to make a way to a heavenly kingdom. Do not fear, your king is coming. We need not fear the future, for the future is in his hands. And we know how it turns out. We got the end of the book. We know one day he will return, and he will be setting up a new heaven and a new earth. And until then, he gives us all that we need to make it there. We know the end of the story. When you're afraid, trust in him alone. Jesus is here. The King is coming. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for coming. Thank you for being our King. Thank you for the amazing and awesome God you are. Thank you for not setting up a Roman kingdom and just going that far, because, boy, we would be the losers for that. Thank you for being the Son of God, the Son of Man, willing to pay for the price of the sins of this world. You came so that we might have life and have it to the full. Lord, may we practice that in the days and weeks ahead, and may this week especially, may we reflect on your grace, on your sacrifice, on your love, and your power at the resurrection. Lord, prepare our hearts to continue to be your people, people of peace and not fear. And we pray all this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ.